Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mill Valley Public Library. Let's give a nice round of applause to the beloved staff here for letting us be here. This here, the first Wednesday series, brought to you by our good friends at the Mill Valley Historical Society and the work that they do most every Wednesday, about 10 a year here. It's great to be here and talk about the history of this beloved town of ours. My name is Charlie Vogelheim. I enjoyed a position on the board at the Mill Valley Historical Society. I live in the house. I grew up here in Mill Valley, which I think qualifies me to be a Millbilly, but my application is still under review. I would love to just say to everyone, again, we grow up in this town. We certainly recognize Horse Hills. We see that the horses there. If you didn't recognize, did that go forward a little bit? There's a great history of dairy and ranches in this area. For any of you that did the Dipsea Trail for many years, you walked on the top of the stairs to the Sunshine Trail on a dirt road through a wonderful horsey area, fondly known as the Flying Y Ranch. And so we're going to tell some stories about the Flying Y Ranch tonight. And who better to do that than Tom Clemons, who grew up nearby. His dad, Robert, was a great photographer, took pictures of the area. Michael Meteyer grew up in New York, but came out here and became the caretaker of the Flying Y Ranch. And Blanche Yates, although from Larkspur, we're very fond of Larkspur, spent her afternoons with her mom riding horses and teaching instruction. So without further ado, just a couple quick announcements. We're trying to get out of here before 8 o'clock, and we do need help putting all the chairs away. We want you to share stories with the Flying Y Ranch afterwards, but you need to put chairs away to tell your story. So we're going to go all the way through the presentations without Q&A, and then we'll finish off afterwards with your own sharing your own story. So without further ado, Michael, Flying Y Ranch.
Greetings. Let's see. How do you home this out? So I'm not sure where we are here. Okay. There we are. Okay. Wow, it's a big crowd. Welcome to the Mill Valley Historical Society first Wednesday presentation, Stories from the Flying Y Ranch. Blanche Yates, Michael Meteyer, and myself will describe the history of the ranch, focusing on Raina Yates' operation, offering boarding, instruction, and trail riding. We will hear about the horses and what it was like to work on the ranch and ride the trails to beach and mountain. We will explore the celebrity connections, including Sam Shepard and the Doobie Brothers' 1975 Stampede album cover photo shoot. I'm Tom Clemons. My family moved to Mill Valley from Indiana in 1964. My dad was a civil engineer hired by the Bechtel Corporation to help build the BART system. He was also a prolific photographer and documented our new life in California. We rented a little cabin near the top of the first flight of Dipsea Stairs on Marion Avenue. I was attending Old Mill School in second grade when this wonderful library was built. Our neighbor, Thelma Percy, was the head librarian from 1970 to 1988. At this time, we'd like to thank Natalie Stoyman of the Lucretia Little History Room, the Mill Valley Public Library, and the Mill Valley Historical Society for this opportunity. Our landlady, Mac Volz, was born in Mill Valley and told us of the times before the streets were paved and everyone rode horses. The basement of our cabin was originally a small stable, and there was a lucky horseshoe nailed up over the entrance. My family enjoyed exploring this area, hiking up the Dipsea Stairs to Edgewood Avenue and to Mount Tamalpais via the Pipeline Trail. We would also continue up the Dipsea Trail, cross Panoramic Highway, and take the Sun Trail on our way up the mountain. Here is a 1930 bird's eye view of the ranch site with the hairpin curve of Sequoia Valley Road and the road up through the ranch. Just beyond is Edgewood Avenue, which was an appropriate name as the trees gave way to grassy hillsides. The area at the top of the stairs was known in early days as Inspiration Point, for the unobstructed view of Mount Tam and Mill Valley. Photo courtesy of Phil Rhodes. I might add that as a kid, I rode cardboard boxes down the grassy hillsides there. Jumping ahead, this picture from 1964 was taken at Edgewood and Sequoia Valley Road, just across the street from the top of the third flight of Dipsea Stairs. My sister Cecily was 3. From the beginning, we were drawn to the horses at the Flying Y Ranch. The first photos from 1964 shows the excitement on our little faces to be able to pet and feed these exquisite animals. Unfortunately, my family didn't know those who ran the place, and we didn't have the money to rent or board horses, but others can tell this part of the story. It's a pleasure to present some really nice photos taken by my dad featuring the ranch in its heyday that are likely from between 1964 and 1970. Also included are photos from my father and myself from the late 1970s after the ranch operations wound down. Finally, a set from the 1980s from my dad that show the construction of today's Walsh Drive. I'd like to acknowledge an array of sources in researching the history of the ranch, and again, thank all of you for your interest in this event. For me, the Flying Y Ranch was one of the last reminders that Mill Valley used to be a very rural place. Originally, the ranch was part of William Richardson's Mexican land grant, Rancho Sausalito. Samuel Throckmorton acquired it as his lawyer and administrator of Richardson's estate. The land was sold as Ranch 5 on the Tamalpais Land and Water Company's map when Mill Valley was incorporated. In 1910, it was included within the Marin View Acres subdivision and soon became the Hillside Dairy. Dairy operations continued through World War II. Mike Moyle's first Wednesday presentation of Southern Marin's Portuguese roots explores how immigrants from the Azores established dairy ranches such as this one throughout Marin. In 1952, the 4-H Valley Riders was founded by a group of teenage horse lovers. They fixed up the buildings on the old Hillside Dairy, turning it into a horse ranch with makeshift boarding facility, corral, horse ring, and club headquarters. The 4-H Valley Riders trained for competitive events such as precision riding and jumping. The kids spent their weekends riding trails on Mount Tamalpais and down to Muir Beach. The ranch later became the Diamond 4-H before being renamed the Flying Y. In 1960, Rena Yates leased the ranch and relocated her horse training program from Marin Country Day School. The Flying Y Ranch offered stall boarding and instruction along with trail riding opportunities on what is now Golden Gate National Recreation Area trails. The ranch included 7 horses, 2 barns, an arena of old tires, several pastures, and a ranch house. In my research for this presentation, I found Karen Johnson's comprehensive 2016 article on the ranch from the Marin Horse Councils at the Barn magazine. I especially enjoyed reading about riding horseback down to Muir Beach and through the surf. There are lots of memories of these adventures posted on Facebook. We will have time at the end for those who want to tell their stories. And I might add that if there's not enough time, you can always post your comments on the YouTube video that we'll be making here. So here's a photo of a race down to the beach that I got from Facebook. In 1974, my family rented a house on Castle Rock Drive, just below the Flying Y. This is a 1904 photo of Castle Rock before it was obscured by trees with Sequoia Valley Road and the site of Flying Y above. In 1975, my dad bought a house at Windy Gap on Panoramic Highway, where my parents lived up till a couple years ago. Near the top of Bayview Drive, it is where the Dipsea Trail now crosses Panoramic Highway. Excuse me. In 1978, as part of my photography class at work at College Marin, I took black and white photos of the ranch, along with the abandoned Diaz Ranch below Four Corners. The Diaz had become part of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area in 1974. By this time, there's not a lot of activity at the Flying Y. As we may hear later, Sam Shepard moved his family from the ranch to a house in Homestead Valley in 1978. The same year, the ranch was sold, and the Flying Y sat abandoned until its development in the 1980s. It was clear to me these places were an important part of Marin County history, and I wanted to capture them before the inevitable changes. The Dipsea Trail runs through the Flying Y site. What is now Walsh Drive is a quarter mile from the top of the third flight of stairs coming up from Mill Valley. The Dipsea was first known as the Lone Tree Trail, and Stinson Beach was originally named Willow Camp. The engraved stone 1-mile marker installed in 2006 is near the end of Bayview Drive and indicates the first mile up from the downtown Mill Valley starting line of the world-famous race. Before that, a cypress tree was designated the 1-mile tree. There is a dip in the trail nearby in a small creek. Himalayan blackberry bushes grew here in abundance, and we used to walk down Bayview to pick them and make pies in August. These photos show the redwood trees on the site. Phil Rhodes' first Wednesday presentation of Mill Valley's Secret Places explored the popular Edgewood Grove just down the hill on Edgewood Avenue. The Flying Y trees are farther up the hill and appear on an 1899 map. I photographed some of these trees in 1978 for my class and then returned in 2024. As Mill Valley's local redwood tree expert, Phil has provided maps and aerial, historical, and recent photos. Phil refers to this spot as Lone Tree Gulch. The largest tree measured 7.5 feet in diameter in 2021. Here are 2 more images I shot in January 2024. This magnificent 1910 photo was also provided by Phil Rhodes. It was taken near Amaranth Boulevard and shows the ranch site. The redwoods make up the top groups of trees extending up from the white building. And you can see those are the 2 groups of redwoods. This photo also includes Castle Rock, Cowboy Rock, and Sequoia Valley Road, in addition to Mount Tamalpais and the Mount Tam and Muir Woods Railroad grade in the background. Here is another extraordinary 1912 shot from the library's history room, also provided by Phil. Note the third flight of Dipsea Stairs and the ranch site beyond. The 2 groups of Lone Tree Gulch redwoods are in the center. Phil noted the lower clump has 3 trees. One has a deformed trunk. Here is another shot from 1978 showing a curved major limb. I'm told that these trees were, the curved branches were from the winds. Okay, on the left, this 1946 aerial shot shows 2 groups of trees identified. It also shows the road and Dipsea Trail extending up to Panoramic Highway at the bottom of the photo. Also shown is a water reservoir that was replaced by a large water tank at Edgewood and Sequoia Valley Road. On the right, a very old redwood from the lower group, also from January 2024. A fairly recent property map shows how the redwoods were protected in publicly accessible open space adjacent to the Lone Tree Trail, which extends up from Sequoia Valley Road. A longtime Mill Valley cab driver told me that Bayview Drive was part of the road up to Mount Tamalpais when he was a teenager. Sequoia Valley Road, built in 1892, connected to Muir Woods via a toll road, but Panoramic Highway was not completed until 1928. The old road ended at Mountain Home Inn, at a kind of a pipeline trestle. In the 1980s, construction began on Walsh Drive and the Walsh Estates. My dad captured the transformation in various stages. The mansions there now are large with expansive views of San Francisco Bay. In 2021, number 9 Walsh Drive was listed as Mill Valley's most expensive home at $12.5 million. One of the homeowners on Walsh Drive has installed a much appreciated water fountain for trail runners along the Dipsea right-of-way. I contacted members of the Walsh family to ask for help in describing this section of slides. There will be time at the end, and we would welcome a brief account from the developer's perspective. Oh, sorry. Our cover photo, taken by my father, shows the lower barn and horse ring in full swing. I count 13 horses in this shot. The next 3 images are blow-ups from the original. The white horse in the foreground is Risha. The green car beyond looks like a 1966 Ford Mustang. That dates the photo to between 1966 and 1970. Blanche has identified one horse at the water trough, and this image is Tonka. Here are riding lessons being conducted by Rena. And I'm assuming that's her there. This slide shows newborn Gay and Mother April in the upper barn. Blanche will show you more of these 2 later. The next 4 slides feature a horse that may be named Muffy, according to Facebook comments after I posted some pictures. The first slide is taken from an upper pasture showing both upper and lower barns. So this is the same horse. This slide is a view from the upper barn towards Amaranth Boulevard. Another comment dates this series of shots to the mid to late 1970s. I guess from the development that you can see in the background. Okay, the next 2 slides are looking down at Muffy in the upper barn. Finally, here's one looking up the pasture towards Palm Way with Tonka looking on. At this point, I'd like to turn the mic over to Michael Meteyer with Blanch Yates to follow. We will have time at the end, sometime, hopefully, for audience members to briefly share their stories. Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. So good to be back here. I'm Michael Meteyer. Every other letter is an E, and they're all pronounced differently. It's a French name. And I was a caretaker from 1972 to about 1975. And one of the boarders at the ranch moved in for a while. Her name was Linda Bourne. A lot of you remember Linda with love and affection. And unfortunately, she passed away about 10 years ago. But she moved in with 2 children, Scott and Sandy, who were about 7 and 9 years old then. And they're here today. And yes, they are. Linda would be delighted to find out that her equestrian love kept on. Between her daughters, 2 daughters, horse-loving women, and 2 granddaughters, and 2 great-granddaughters are all equestrians and just loving the horse life. So after I moved out, Sam Shepard and his family moved in, which gives me a chance to introduce a couple of people who came all the way up from L.A., Susan Campo and Sam's sister, Sandy. Where are they? And so Susan is writing a bio on Sam that's going to come out in 1925 or 26. Oh. And so I just turned 77, and, and I can time travel now. So what I'm going to do now is we're all going to time travel. We're going to get on those horses, the most big, magnificent animals in the history of the world, just about, and we're going to ride straight up the hill, which is where the Flying Y was, and we're going to ride back about 50 years. And we're going to get some horse stories in here and while we're doing it. So here was the ranch. That's Scott in the background on Kitty. There's Sandy. There's me. There's Mocha, a Toggenburg goat that I fell in love with, and he ended up being one of my best friends. And Sarge. And Sarge at one point, usually when Linda moved in and the kids moved in, the house was just a free-for-all, and everybody stayed there. The kids would have tech parties when they had shows, and it was just it was a wild circus. So usually there were people there. One day there wasn't for some reason, and Sarge, who was locked inside, jumped through the updoor window, the window in the upper floor, and jumped through the window and landed on the ground and didn't hurt himself. So this is not what it looks like. There was an old goat that we inherited named Billy. You know, that's the name that we was given. And so he just had this old shack that he lived in, and we kind of left him alone. One day I thought we'd get a picture. I wanted to form a portrait of Billy, and just as the photographer was taking the picture, Billy turned and got me really good. And the photographers, David Saylors went on to have quite a notable career over in Manhattan as a photographer. So we had a lot of people in those days who would gain fame, and a lot of you folks are too young to remember, but it was an interesting area. Thanks a lot to Rena and Roy. Rena, this is before Horse Whisperers. Rena was kind of a horse shouter. It was through her iron will. Neither of them had any money. Roy was a teacher from Marin Country Day School. He was also a first-rate musician, produced an orchestral piece that was put on by Denver Symphony when he was in his 20s. But they somehow, with baling wire and prayer and Rena's iron will, they kept that ranch going. Here's Billy's Palace, and designed by the same architect that did the house, if you've seen the house. So Billy didn't want any changes, and once I said, well, the least I can do is paint his place and make it look, a little different. So I painted it all white, and the next morning he licked everything off. It was totally gone. And he was my poetry editor too. I used to drink in those days, and I'd go out there and with a bunch of poems that I'm showing to Billy, and he'd eat the ones he liked. The other ones he would. So there's me on my horse Tennyson on the left, and that's me on, I think that's Baber or Penny. It's Penny. It's Penny. And so Tennyson was a Tennessee walker, and I got him before he even got a horse. I was at work, before I got a car. I was at work, and Rita knew where I was, and she came, and she said, you got to come, I found the horse for you. I go, you got to get this horse. And so I did. And I loved it. And I eventually had to sell him after a few years to pay for his eye operation. He had cancer of the eye. But, like I say, I just turned 77. Some of the happiest days I ever had in my life was jumping out, getting out of bed, going down outside in the pasture, getting my goat and getting my horse and jumping on him, and then going up to the Diaz, past Four Corners, down to Tinkerbell's Ranch, and out to Muir Woods and the Muir Beach. And it was just the freedom that was allowed was just incredible back in those days. Marin was a totally different place. There's almost no traffic on Highway 1 back then. And so, I took the goat was never tethered or anything like that. He came along. The only thing is Tennyson liked the goat more than he liked me. And those of you who knew horses know that they always are communicating. They have millions of ways of communicating, with their lips and their whiskers and whatever, everything. And it was just great to listen to those guys talk. There's Sandy on Why He Brave. So Sandy grew up to have her own business. She has a hair salon in Sebastopol. I have not let anybody else cut my hair in, I think, 20 years, 30 years. She's done it every time. She does it exactly right every time. Her superpower is people. And here she is, and horses. Of course, she's still into horses. She's got her horse face on here, game face. And here's Scott on Kitty. And Scott, it was your birthday, Scott, or Christmas? I get mixed up when. Linda made a long rope. It went all outside the house, all around to the back pasture, and there on the end of it, and said, "You follow it, see what's there." And there on the end of it was Kitty, his horse. There's Sonny. I don't know Sonny well. There's Tinnack. It's always Tinnack, man. It's always ponies. They're the smartest ones. They always get out. Tinnack. So down the road from the ranch was a 2 a.m. club. And Tinnack would get at 2 a.m. usually, too, and get another couple of horses together and says, "Let's get out, and let's go down to the 2 a.m. club." And they, we get calls. Fortunately, as I said, there wasn't a lot of traffic that then. It could have been really bad. But he was nasty. We took him on a ride once, and somebody was on him. And we went to the ocean, and he decided it was time to roll. So he rolled in the water with a kid on him. And I heard a rumor that Rena took a 2x4 to his head once, but I'm not sure. And I don't know that. Okay, here's my chance to use this fancy thing here. So that's Susie. Hi, Susie, if you get the chance to watch this. And where's my little pointer? Anyway, look on the horse, follow the back of the horse, and see two little puppies up there. And that's Maymay and JJ, our two little puppies. They were adorable, and so they came when we moved. We moved to Tamales, and is Jackie Edemont here tonight? Jackie! So Jackie Edemont came to Linda and I and said, we were thinking of moving, and said, "We got a deal. Well, you guys find a ranch you like, and we'll buy it, and you can live there." We go, "Oh, okay, we'll do that." And so you probably remember Maymay and JJ. Yeah. Yeah, those were good days, and thank you, Jackie and Michael. So Maymay and JJ actually helped me get a job once. Years later, I'd gone into the blindness field, and I was interested in working with guide dogs. So Guiding Eyes from the Blind in New York was looking for somebody that had my skill set. And I went in, and the guy in charge there knew Juanita Munson, who was where I got the dogs from. Does anybody here know the name Juanita Munson? So you know her history and everything, yeah. Really, what a character. She was amazing. So I'm doing the interview, and I go, "Well, I taught King Charles Spaniels how to be sheepdogs once." And they're all saying, "How'd you do that?" I said, "Well, at this ranch, I get the two dogs in the back of the truck, and I hightail it up to the North 40 where the sheep were, and I dump the dogs out of the truck and hightail it back down to the barn. And the dogs would chase after me, and the sheep would see all the dogs and chase after the dogs. And I get into the barn and go into the corral, and dogs would follow in, sheep follow in. I go behind the corral and lock the door, and I said they were sheepdogs." And then the guy in charge says, "You knew Juanita Munson?" And I go, "Yeah." And I got the job. So there's Susie. I don't know this foal. Does anybody know who that's a classic shot. But you can see that the Flying Y was not, the house wasn't in its best days, but man, we had a lot of fun there. So I got time for, I think, this is the shot. Bob Dylan song of All the Tired Houses in the Sun. How am I going to get any writing done? And I think of this. I think of this every time I hear that song. I'm going to get Blanche in a minute, but I want to fit in. I think I have time. I do have time, 2 minutes to fit in a couple stories. So we had a couple notable horses too. One was Lucky, and Lucky was a great grandson of Man o' War, who was a famous, a lot of people know. But Lucky was kind of a pea-brain, unfortunately, and that was his nickname because you'd never know what he'd do. But he was an excitable horse. And those of you who know horses know they are brilliant and also excitable and muscular and loving and also crazy sometimes. So anyway, we're doing a trail ride. We're going on this narrow bridge, which is only up a couple of feet. And right above us, we hear an air balloon and go, shh, like he goes, wah, and jumps up over the side of the thing. And fortunately, nobody got hurt. He landed in a bunch of brambles, but we're all safe. And another time, is anybody in the Mountain Theater, the productions they used to have? So they did one, it was a Mark Twain play, and the actors come to us and they say, can we borrow a horse? And we go, yeah, do you guys know how to ride? Oh, yeah. Will there be any guns? Oh, no. So we went to a couple rehearsals and checked it out. Nobody shot off any guns or anything. And then on the opening day, play opens up, first act, one of the actors takes the gun out and shoots a blank off. Boom! The horse, and we can't remember which horse it was, not Lucky, because we would never let Lucky go, ran all the way back from the mountain home down to Flying Y Ranch. He could have been a guide horse instead of a guide dog. I mean, that was incredible. He had never been, well, he had been there for the practice, but he knew that route. So horses are always surprising you. And then I guess the last story I'll tell is that when I first was learned to ride, I grew up with all the cowboys, and all the great cowboys, Roy Rogers and all those guys. And so I'm on with Rena, and I'm Royce, an old racehorse. And I don't have much balance. I was a fairly good athlete, but I still fell off. And Rena, instead of showing sympathy, starts yelling at me like, how can you do that? We got 5-year-old girls who can ride that horse, and you can't. I'm lying down there. You know, what would Gary Cooper do? But I never fell off a horse again after that. So her methods did work. So that's pretty much it. This is a delightful get-together. I've seen some people I haven't seen in 50 years. I'm sure we're all going to be getting together again and pulling out some old memories and some old photos. And this is lovely. So thank you so much.
So I can look at the pictures. I kind of stand this way. Yeah. You guys can see me if I'm standing this way, right?
You have the mic?
Well, I was just going to have the mic because I wanted to, move that over. There you go. Perfect. Thank you. All right. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. And then this is forward. Okay. So hold on. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Blanche Yates. I'm Rena Yates' daughter, and I grew up in Larkspur in Mill Valley in the 60s and the 70s, and I think a lot of you know what that means. So I helped my mom train and teach riding lessons at the Flying Y Ranch and also guided trail rides as well. And so what I want to do is to start out, I want to give you a little history about how my parents ended up in California, because they are not native Californians. They met in Arizona at college, and they fell in love. And then they moved to Denver, Colorado, which was where my dad was from. And they had 3 boys, my 3 older brothers, Roy, Cliff, and Ross, all 3 1 year apart. And my dad got his teaching credential in Denver and decided that they wanted to come out to California. And so he put out the feelers in his resume and was offered a job at Marin Country Day School in Corte Madera. So they packed up their station wagon, their 3 boys, all of their stuff, a pregnant horse named Feather, and they trailered her out to California to the little town called Bolinas. And so they lived in Bolinas for a few months, and then they moved to Forest Knolls, and then they ended up in the town of Larkspur in the Madrone Canyon, which many of you probably know. And so my mom, after we moved and my dad started teaching, they asked my mom to start a riding program at Marine Country Day School, which she did do. And she had 5 or 6 horses, I believe, and started teaching there. And did so for a few years. And then they discontinued that program, so she decided she needed to continue it because she had already started getting a reputation as being a horsewoman in Marin County, teaching English lessons and training horses. So, and I was not born yet, by the way, so this is all stuff I've heard. So she went on a little trek to find a ranch, and indeed she ran up, found this place, this dilapidated old dairy up on Sequoia Valley Drive, and somehow was able to procure a lease there, and she changed the name to the Flying Y Ranch. And she had 7 horses to start, and she started her riding program in earnest there. So that's kind of where the history of that. Let's see, I need to go check my notes here. Okay, so here's, I've got quite a bit of slides, so I'm not going to talk about every single one of them, but I will stop on a few and enlighten that on that. So this is Lucky with an unknown girl we don't know. Yes? It's you? Oh, yay, Margaret, yay! I'm so thank you for identifying yourself. And there's Risha in class, of course. Many people in September, these are horses that were lesson horses for many years, and a lot of you probably learned on these horses. And there's my mom, of course, and notice her mouth is wide open yelling. Okay, so part of our training program at the Flying Y was you would ride for about 45 minutes, and then you would take the saddle off and ride bareback. And you can see she has the saddle in her hand, and the person, she had just taken the saddle off, and the person's gonna move forward. And so that was integral in learning how to do your horsemanship, was riding bareback. Oops, what did I do? Uh-oh. Did I turn it off? Oh, there. Okay, sorry. So there's a typical class of my mom's. So here I'm going to just talk about my mom and I was her assistant, okay? So my job was we'd get up to the ranch and I would get the horses and bridle and saddle them as quickly as we can, get the people on the horses. And so for the beginning riders, which there's many of you here that learned how to ride English riding lessons at the Flying Y, and I don't know if you remember what my job was to teach you how to post. And posting is kind of hard to tell a 5-year-old what to do and how to do it. So my mom would put me on behind you, and I would grab you by the pants, and I would go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And that really did the trick. So instead of taking an hour to teach a kid how to ride, do the posting, it took maybe one time around the ring. So that was effective. And so once you got the posting down and the guiding and everything, then you had to graduate to the canter. But guess what? You got to sit to the canter, right? So my job, get back up on behind that person, and we would be trotting up, down, and the horse would break into the canter, and if I wasn't there, that child would go flying off the horse. So I would sit them down, and I'd just kind of hold them there. And so they learned how to ride that way. So fortunately, I don't think I fell off too many times myself, and I kept most of the people on. So that was part of my role. So there you see a class there. And let's keep on. There's Lucky, and we talked about Lucky being pea-brain. He was stupid. He was a beautiful horse to ride in the arena, but just not on the trail. And there's April and anybody know who that is? Recognize? I don't. And there's Hurricane. So Hurricane was one of our original lesson horses, and we didn't know it, but he had been trained as a circus horse. And one time I was riding him, and I was bareback, and I was doing something with his mane, and I was tapping on him. And all of a sudden, he started doing this. And I stopped, and he stopped, and then it was like, I did it again. So I went, okay. So we practiced with him. We say, Hurricane, how old are you? 1, 2, 3, 4. So that was kind of fun. And then another time, I was on the ground with him, and I was doing something with his front leg, and all of a sudden he started kneeling down like this. So he knew how to take a bow as well. So, and we didn't know this about this horse, so that was kind of fun. One of the best lesson horses. And there's Risha and Lynn. And holy smoke. So he was another really great lesson horse that we had. And he was a big horse. He was like over 16 hands, and he was white. And my mom, when she got him, he was a registered quarter horse, and usually quarter horses quite kind of short and stocky. And she took one look at him, and she said, holy smoke. So that's how Holy got his name. And there's the Dowd's trailer. Do you remember the Dowd's trailer? We had our tack in the Dowd's trailer, so that was fun. Another horse that you saw this is September, was you saw some pictures of Royce, I think, during Tom's presentation. I don't have a picture of Royce, but Royce was an old racehorse, and I'm just going to keep these going here. And he he had been retired, and he ended up in some lady's backyard. And so somebody had known my mom was good with horses. So she called my mom up and said, we have this horse that we'd like you to take a look at. We went down and saw Royce. He was down by, you know where Marin Joe's is? There used to be a little ranch down there. And Royce was in the backyard. He was starving, and he was not doing well. So we took him, and we fed him up. And after about 6 months, my mom said, okay, Blanche, it's time to get on him to see what he can do. Because that was also my job, was to get on the horse the first time, right? So, in fact, many of you tonight have told me that I trained your horse, and I don't remember, because I was young. So, anyways, this is one of the horses I did train, and I do remember her. That's Julie. She was my horse, Robbie's daughter, basically, out of September. And so, anyways, you notice my fancy riding outfit? That's what I wrote in, because like Michael said, we didn't have any money. A lot of people thought because we had horses, we had money. The money went to the horses, not to the garb. So I was fortunate enough to have friends that were older than me that gave me hand-me-downs, such as Kathleen Balmas. I got my first pair of rubber riding boots from her. So anyways, Julie was the first horse I remember training, and I think I'm about maybe 9 or 10 there, something like that. Okay, so there we are again. And Feather. So Feather was the horse that my mom brought out from Colorado. And my mom's nickname for Feather was the mother of us all, because she won. She was a foundation horse. She had Risa and Robbie. And then Robbie, before he was gelded, got loose into the back pasture with all the mares, and he bred 3 of them. And they all had babies. So, yeah, so finally she gelded them, and that was that. And there's another picture of Lynn and Hurricane again. And there's Lynn with her little sister looking on, and Gay, and April, and more pictures. And there's Kathleen with her mom and her sister. That was way back when. And there's Kathleen on her horse, Czar. He was a beautiful Arab horse. And then these pictures I'm just going to go through them. They're pictures after the horses left the ranch, and they're just photos that I'm just going to run through them.
These were more of my dad's.
Right, these were Tom's dad's photos pretty much. But it just gives you an idea of how dilapidated our ranch was. But you know what? We made it work. Inside the barn. Okay, so there's my mom with baby Risha. This is an older photo. Risha was born, I think, when she was at Emmerin Country Day School is when she was born. So, and that's her old dog, Little Girl. And then, let's see, we've got my mom. This is the last recent photo we have of her, about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. And then there's me. So the Flying Y Ranch sign. There's a story about that. So Linda Meteyer, when she moved up to the Flying Y, we had a sign that was, you could barely see it. It was falling apart. So Linda took it upon herself to make this sign, which was, back in the day, it was new. And so that was hanging there when the ranch got sold. And I remember driving by there and seeing that sign for like a year or so. And I thought, you know, if I don't take that sign, it's going to get destroyed. So I snuck up there one night with a friend of mine, and we took the sign, and we refurbished it, and we hung it. I gave it to my mom, and she had it hanging in her house when she died, and then I took it with me. Unfortunately, I took it to a house that I was living in Paradise, and because of the 2018 Camp Fire, I lost all my memorabilia for the horse ranch, and so that's why I'm really thankful about all of you bringing me pictures and sending me pictures and giving me memories about that. It's really special. And there's Lucky and my little brother John riding Bo. It's a pretty good action picture. And there's Tammy and Sugar. Tammy's here tonight. A lot of you are here tonight. My friend Michelle. And there's me on Robbie. That's when I'm a little older there. Francis on Joler. Holy smoke. And there's my mom on her stallion, Garricene. My mom got Garricene from the Edna Draper. I don't know if that name rings a bell, the Drapers. They raised Arabians in, I think it was Novato. So he was a sire of some of our horses at the ranch as well. And there's Sam Shepard. So I'm just going to tell you really quickly, my mom and Sam Shepard were both involved in a philosophy. They studied the teachings of a man called Gurdjieff, and so they had that shared interest. And so my mom met Sam, and Sam found out I babysat, so I babysat for their son Jess while they lived in Corte Madera. And then eventually he started coming up and riding at the ranch, got a horse, and then when Mike and Linda left, my mom invited them and their Sam and his family to come live at the ranch, and they accepted. So I just have one quick story about Sam. What he offered me to take me to the horse races. I'd never been to the horse races, and I was like, at this time, I think I'm like 12 or 13, something like that. So I go, well, sure, I'll go to the horse races with you. So he takes me and his kid and a couple other people, and he says, make sure you have your $2 for the bet. So I had my $2. And we go to Bay Meadows, or Golden Gate Fields, I think it was. That's the one across the bay, right? So I went to Golden Gate Fields. And so I said, well, how do I know who to bet on? And so he gives me this paper, and it has all the horses listed in their stats, and I'm reading them. And I go, can I go see the horse? And he goes, sure. So we go down to the barn, and we look at the horses, and there's one that I standed out. I liked it best. So I said, I want to put my $2 on this horse. And he says, are you sure about that? And I go, yeah. He goes, well, that's the long shot. It's 20-1 that horse is going to win, right? And I'm like, well, I don't care. I want to put my $2 on that horse. So he went and he placed my bet for me, and then he did not bet on that horse. That horse won. So I got $40. So that's my story about Sam. And now, do you want to hear about my day with the Doobies? Okay. The day with the Doobies. So my mom would go, each summer she would leave to go to New York for a week to study under the Gurdjieff philosophy. So she would leave me in charge by the time I was like 12, I would be going up there in the summertime teaching lessons. So I was a young teenager, and it was a Thursday morning. I was teaching the adult class. And this woman comes up the driveway, and she's all dressed up really fancy. And I thought, oh, gosh, who is this? And she comes over, and she says, can I talk to the manager, please? And I said, well, why, for one? And she goes, well, because we want to rent horses. And I said, well, we don't rent horses, so, that's it. Well, we're trying to make an album cover, and, we just really need the horses for a day. And I said, well, who's it for? And she says, it's for the Doobie Brothers. And I went, oh, okay, well, I'm the manager, and do they know how to ride? And she says, well, yeah, I think some of them do, I said, okay. So I told her that I would go ahead and get 5 of the horses of ours, and I would have to supervise because, I didn't want to have anything happen. So the next morning, it was a Friday, me and another girl at the ranch ponied the 5 horses out to the Diaz property to their old ranch house that the Doobies had somehow procured permission to use that house as for a photo shoot. And then they wanted me to take them out to the big, where we rode out where the National Recreation area is now. and do some shoots, and they wanted to get the horses running and stuff like that. And I said, okay. So, I get to the ranch, and they had gotten some Western tack because we didn't have Western saddles or anything. So we got them all saddled. 2 of them knew how to ride pretty well. The other 3 not so much. So I did a little training and did that, and they did really well. And then we went out to the Diaz Ranch, out to where we're going to find a place where they can run the horses. Well, I knew the perfect spot, because when we used to take trail rides out to the Diaz property, there was a group of eucalyptus trees. And we would take the horses out to the eucalyptus trees, let them sit and eat, and then we'd turn around and go home, and my mom would make us go single file because those horses wanted to run, right, to get home. So I said, oh, we'll just take you out to the eucalyptus trees. So that's what we did. We went out there, and I said, turn them around, and boom. And so that's where that shot came from. The eucalyptus trees, you can't see them, but they're just up there. And so they got that shot. And then and the album I have over there, we'll show it. I'll put it out for display. So anyways, then they took some other pictures over the ridge above Muir Beach and stuff. So I spent the day with the Doobies. I made them ride the horses back to the ranch. I wasn't going to pony them. And so there you go. And let's see. Okay, so let me just think I had a couple other things. I just want to check my notes here. Okay, so the ranch was sold in 1978 or 77 or 78, and I remember I was not living with my mom at the time, but I was at her house, and she was in San Francisco, and I got a phone call from a woman saying, I'm so-and-so, I'm from property management, and the Flying Y Ranch has just been sold to a developer, and you need to get your horses off the ranch in 60 days. And I was like bawling. I'm like, what? So I called my mom up in the city, and I told her, and so she came home, and within 60 days, we found homes for all the horses, or either gave them away, sold them, or moved them to different stables. And then my mom had 3 of her horses that were relocated up to Tamales at the Edamond Ranch and Tunnel Hill Ranch with Mike and Linda. And so that's what happened to the horses. It was the end of the Flying Y in 60 days, which was just horrifying to me. So I'd like to just say in closing, I'd like to say how much the Flying Y Ranch meant to so many people and who had the opportunity to be part of the ranch. It literally changed the course of a life for some of the students who rode there. I, for one, am forever grateful for my time at the ranch, assisting my mom, for forming relationships and sharing my love for horses with all of you. So thank you for coming tonight, and we will have time for questions and for all of you to come up and talk for a certain period of time. So thank you so much.
Great job, you guys. And how fun is this? I mean, this isn't a historical talk. This is a reunion. Yeah. So it's awesome. Please come on up, Michael and Tom. I don't know if you want to do. We have time for a few questions before we have to start putting the chairs down. But again, we welcome you all to stay and help us put the chairs away in a few minutes. But any quick questions here? Yes.
Our last name was Yates, so it was the Y was for Yates, and she just, that's running K, flying Y. That was typical name for a ranch, so that's where it came from. Do we have time for other stories at all?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody that has a story that they like to share for a few minutes? Raise the hands.
Yeah,
okay.
Quick question, and why don't you come up here?
I don't think it was my mom's. Okay. I don't recall my mom. Yeah, that doesn't sound familiar for my mom's. Okay, and you would like to share something?
Quick story, yeah.
Yeah, come on.
Please.
Just come on.
Well, that's okay. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Margaret, and I was at the Flying Y, one of the manure-encrusted denizens from about 1962 to...
Go to the microphone, yeah, please.
To 1968, or 69, I think. I was 16 when I left. And Lucky was my horse. I was, before Blanche, I was Mrs. Yates' riding assistant. At that time, I was part of the advanced class, and then I helped teach the lessons. And there was one summer when she broke her ribs in a car crash and couldn't come up to the ranch at all, so the advanced class just took over and taught all the lessons. I mean, I have endless stories, but she reminded me Lucky was my horse at that time. I sponsored him, and I too was injured by him. We went for a trail ride up Mount Tam, and we're going along the bow knot, and we're doing a brisk trot, and I'm very relaxed, and I don't even have my hands on the reins. They're looped, and I'm posting along. And a family appeared around the bend, and he went, "Wah!" as he tends to do, and I flew off and landed on my butt on a pile of rocks. And I could hardly move, but I was able, with help of my friends, was able to get back on him and ride standing up back down to the Flying Y. And the doctor yelled at me, and he said, "Why on earth did you ride that horse down? You needed to not get back on." And of course, what are you going to do on Mount Tam? In those days, there's no, that's all you could do. And so the other horse who hurt me was Tinac. And I decided one day, he was standing next to me, he was standing in the ring, and I decided he just hadn't had enough love. And so I was scratching him and talking to him, everything, and he just looked at me, and then he reached gently through the bars of the ring and bit me as hard as he could on the ribs. And I was back at the doctor, who was yelling, who was yelling at me again. I just wanted to mention how nice it is to see Blanche here, and I hope there are others who remember me. I don't recognize any faces. This is a blur. We're older. Me too. And yeah. No, the ring was very hard and rocky. And so there was one summer I went, when I was 14, I think, I went down to a place called Foxfield in Westlake Village and did a summer camp there and took lessons and learned to jump and got most improved rider because I'd never really jumped a horse before. Even Lucky, who could do jumps easily. You just didn't want to, you would wreck their legs. People look at the rundown ranch and they think maybe the horses weren't well cared for, but they were brilliantly cared for. Those animals were all, really well looked after. Anyway, I'll stop.
Appreciate it. No, that's great. Thank you. Any other questions for anyone? Yeah. Anyone in the back?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, please, come on up, Michael.
Don't be shy.
Claim a minute back there.
Yeah, and Tom, if you'd like to come up also. Do you have any other comment? Okay.
Was somebody coming up?
Yeah.
No. Oh, yeah.
I have another Tinac story.
There's a lot of those.
My name's Phyllis Goldsmith, and my family and I grew up not far from the Flying Y. My brother Paul, who's here, and I had shared a horse. His name was Ivanhoe. It was a big, long pinto, very sweet horse, and we rode all over. We went over to Lagunitas and spent the night over there, and up to on all those trails that said no horses allowed. And we spent a lot of time on the Diaz running around, racing on that long open stretch. But my Tinac story, so we spent a lot of, from I think 61 maybe through 66 or something, we were there. And one other thing is that we cleaned the stalls, my brother and I cleaned the stalls in exchange for rent for a while. That didn't last too long, but because I was really little. But I don't know if you've ever mucked a stall, but it's heavy. But my Tinac story, so my friend was renting or sponsoring Tinac, and we'd been out to Muir Beach. We went out there all the time. It was just our regular thing, and Tinac was really misbehaving. And I was a pretty tough little girl. I had 4 older brothers, and I had a horse, and Ivanhoe was a big horse. So I said, okay, I'll ride Tinac home, and you can ride on Ivanhoe. So my friend Ronna gets on Ivanhoe, and Ivanhoe's pretty well behaved, and I get on Tinac, and he's, I'm tough, and I'm telling him no funny business, because as you've already heard, he was a very mischievous pony. And we get to the top of that road there to go down, and here comes a dog that was probably almost as big as Tinac. And so Tanak just went ahead and just threw me right off him, and then tripped on me, fell on me, and I've never been the same since. It didn't stop me from riding, but I don't think I rode Tanak again after that. Anyway, it was really the ranch and your mom and hanging out there at that ranch was a very important part of my childhood, and just the freedom that we had. I think probably children these days have no idea that you know, we could hop on our horses and ride up to the top of Mount Tam, or just go spend the night over at Lagunitas. My parents would meet us out there and bring us food, and we'd, you know, tie the horses out overnight and come back the next day. It was really quite a special experience to have.
Thank you. Yeah. A quick question while Michael's coming up. Certainly mountain biking has taken over the trails a lot now, but back then, you know, a few of us were what we call clunker bike riding at the time. Was there much interaction between cyclists?
You know, typically bikes and horses do not mix, okay? It's just not a good idea. I don't recall a lot of that, but I just, real quick, those Dipsea runners, we streaked them.
I just found the end of my talk, and another famous person that used to come up the ranch a lot was Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and hopefully a lot of you in here know who he is. It's a legendary poet and associated with beatniks a lot. And so we came up once, and we drove down to Green Gulch, where he knew the Zen Center, where he knew the Roshi, and we go up there, and there's this big commotion. It's a huge crowd, and there's these guys walking around with purple hats on, and Ferlinghetti says, "It's the Buddhist police," and then he remembered. He said, "I forgot. I was invited to this. It was the 49th day celebration of the death of Alan Watts." And so we ride in on horseback, and everybody recognizes Ferlinghetti, and they didn't know who I was, but it was amazing. So we had some great rides with him, and he was an extraordinary character. But he did write a poem about horses, as he said, "Don't let that horse," and that's how I wanted to end my talk. It goes, "Don't let that horse eat that violin," cried Chagall's mother. But he kept on painting, and he became famous, and he kept on painting the horse with violin in mouth. And when he finally finished it, he jumped up on the horse and rode away, waving the violin. And then, with a low bow, gave it to the first naked nude he ran across, and there were no strings attached.
Thank you. That was wonderful. And with that, we're going to formally conclude that the president. Oh, did you want to? Oh, sorry. No, we're not. One more. This will be the last.
I was that little girl in that one photo. No, I'm kidding. I thank you so much for this presentation. It's so special to hear about the history of horses in this area. And my reason for getting up here is because I don't want us to lose Horse Hill, and right now, for the first time in a long time, we have open spaces. So I am asking you to send out to all your people who have horses, who love horses, and who want to keep Horse Hill's herd at its maximum, which is 14, to please go on to our Facebook page, Horse Hill Mill Valley. And we have a post right there right now advertising that we have openings, because we want to keep that going, and I can only imagine how hard it was to lose a Flying Y. So let's keep Horse Hill, which is magical, going. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then, Tom, you mentioned Facebook also. You have a page for, is it Flying Y, or what is it that you were showing some of the photos you talked about? Didn't you reference that? Or?
Well, I posted some on Lost Marin.
On Lost Marin, okay. Great. It's nice to hear Facebook used for good. So, Yeah, so appreciate that. So one final round of applause to Blanche, Michael, and Tom. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, if you would like to gather towards the front and reminisce and things like that, I encourage you. I really need, we need help from everyone else, and let's talk about what we're going to do.
And just what I was going to say, by the way, so Blanche has her signed copy of the Doobie Brothers album over here on the magazine album right there. And it would really help if you choose to help, that's great. If not, get out of here. I mean, but just move that direction so we can pick the chairs up. That'd be great help for all of us. Thank you so much for coming out.
Perfect.